Hey everyone, this is Sean Deveney from Heavy.com Sports. I've got Steve Bulpett, our NBA insider, with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about some NBA news and issues. First off, Steve, maybe not news, but you were out at the Chicago Draft Camp last weekend, which I guess we're calling last week rather, which I guess we're calling the Combine these days. Uh, the measure of it in terms of it being a combine has certainly changed over the years. What did you find, and how was it for you out there last week?
Well, unlike the NFL, the top players do not really participate in any meaningful way. Um, they're there for a couple of national things and to get their physicals, and I guess, and that's basically become the idea for the top players, and for people that have kind of gotten promises. It's funny how people will all of a sudden, the ones who are actually going to participate in the on-court games, which differs from the off-court games. I don't know how, but all of a sudden, if they get a promise, they all of a sudden cease to be participating. So the best parts of it are, okay, for the teams. Everyone gets to do the physicals in one spot, and there's not guys getting poked and prodded and their knees messed around with at 15 different places. Also, with the new setup there, the combine itself took place at Wintrust Arena, which is where DePaul plays, and they bring back seats, so there's plenty of floor space to do their testing and the games, etc. But even, I think, a bigger part of it is that there's a hotel attached to it, just across a walkway, and I think 23 or 25 of the 30 teams stayed there. And what that does is there's a lot of bumping into in the coffee shops and things like that, and there's the chance that discussions that may have started during the season, or when people realize what is or isn't going to happen, or they want to happen with their free agents, restricted and unrestricted, talks start to happen. So it's kind of a bit of a crafts fair for a lot of people, and a lot of college coaches show up there as well. So it's an interesting basketball time.
Yeah, was there anything that stood out to you? Things that you heard, or things that conversations that you had that were particularly informative or entertaining?
Well, it's funny how you'd ask people who helped themselves, who hurt themselves, and some names would appear on both lists. So it's like, okay, there's a whole lot of there's a good amount of camaraderie in the NBA, but there's also a good bit of distrust. It's kind of funny how it works. I mean, I guess when you've got teams that are you've got a good sized group of front office people that are there, they can tend to stick to their own, and outside of the guys who have played against each other that are now in positions of authority, it's kind of funny to see how things work and just how the mating rituals work.
Yeah, and certainly it's a time of year for smoke screens, which I always like, and I think that's part of it. If you like a guy, and you talk to somebody like me or you, and you want it out there that guy's terrible and nobody's going to take him, then that might increase your chances. I mean, at least that's how the old school thinking used to go, is that you can create some negative buzz and maybe get the guy that you want. I don't know that really works that much anymore, but that's sort of the traditional way that it used to work, at least.
Yeah, we tend to. I mean, from the heavy standpoint, heavy.com, I try to stay away from that stuff. It's to watch a guy for X number of minutes in a scrimmage with referees and the whole bit, and it's being called properly, and it's a real live basketball game. But to think that you're going to see something there that's going to alter what you've seen all year, I think what guys like a talked to Scottie Pippen Jr., and he's, was a scorer in college, and he's there trying to prove that, hey, I can be a distributor, I can be a more complete guard here, because I'm not just being asked to score a ton of points, which is what was the case for him at Vanderbilt. So there are guys trying to prove some things. There are guys who have tried to alter their bodies since the end of their regular season. I love the line about Kenneth Lofton Jr. A scout told me he's 25 pounds away from being 25 pounds away, but he's on the right track. They like his basketball, but his career is essentially going to be decided by how he reconfigures his body, takes care of his body, makes himself available, prepared for an NBA schedule, 82-game schedule.
Yeah. It's funny that you reported that, and you mentioned that he did make a good impression, and then 2 days later he announced he's staying in the draft. There was some question as to whether he'd go back to, I believe it's Louisiana Tech, and he obviously heard. Maybe he read what you wrote, or at least heard that he got the same feedback from.
And he's not related. It's Kenneth Lofton Jr.
I was quite sure he was related to Kenny Lofton, and then I looked at him and I was like, he's not related to Kenny Lofton.
No, that's an entirely different body type. But then again, and Kenny Lofton was a basketball player too. It was Arizona State. Arizona.
I think it was Arizona, right? Yeah.
And but I think Kenneth Lofton Jr. would look at Kenny Lofton and think lunch.
Oh boy. All right. So again, I'm going to switch some topics here. I'm Sean Deveney from Heavy.com Sports, and this is Steve Bulpett, our NBA insider. Let's talk a little bit about the Lakers. There's been obviously their coaching situation has been talked about, rumored about, probably going back to mid-season or so, when it was clear that Frank Vogel was unlikely to survive the year. Now, there's been some reporting that Darvin Ham is sort of the leader there. There's been a couple other guys involved in potentially being leaders, and that's Kenny Atkinson and Terry Stotts. There's Doc Rivers sort of looming over the whole thing and what will happen with him, if anything. The Sixers, I think, tried to make it clear that they want Doc Rivers back, but we'll see. What's your read on that situation?
Well, what we reported vis-a-vis Doc Rivers is that Joel Embiid really wants Doc to stay. He's, kind of adamant about that. But I got to tell you, everybody out there looked at Daryl Morey's statement that Doc Rivers is going to be our coach next year. He came out right after the season and said that. Pretty much everyone in the NBA is looking at that as a statement of, if you want him, it's going to cost you. So we're still trying to track down some things about this and to see if it's going anywhere. But Philly's got some major decisions it's got to do with James Harden, and does he take his $47 million this year? Does he opt out of that for a longer contract? Does he sign an extension? There's a whole lot and there's the very basic question for Philadelphia of, is what you have and what you can build enough to win? Because if it's not, you've got two major high-priced people you're paying in Harden and Embiid. And at some point, is it best to go down a road that, if you can't find the right pieces to go with, or even more important, if James Harden isn't going to be James Harden that like he was, then is there a new process to start?
And if you can look at it from the other lens, from the Lakers lens, do they want Doc Rivers? And if so, who wants Doc Rivers? Because, I think my reading of the situation, people that I've talked to, is that, Phil Jackson, Kurt Rambis, that wing of the organization, and there's so many different layers to this organization, of course, and that's part of the trick. is that they don't really want Doc Rivers. They don't want somebody who's going to come in and be a veteran guy with a strong voice. They want somebody they can kind of mold in the way that they want to do things. I'm not saying they're going to come out and run the triangle every time down, but change the offense a little bit, get Russell Westbrook more involved, or get him involved in a different way, I guess is the way to put it. That they're not going to want Doc Rivers there, but the LeBron wing of the team, and by proxy you get Anthony Davis with that as well. Is we want a guy like Doc Rivers, who's a player's coach and has won, and that's who guys like that want in this scenario. So I wonder from the Lakers' perspective, what the view of this is, and what part of the organization wins.
Well, the fact that it's not already done, I think, shows you the validity of the stuff we've been writing about the Lakers.
Right.
The things are a bit screwy there. You're the LA Lakers.
If you wanted Darvin Ham, you could have him by now.
Well, not just that, but if you're the Lakers, if the situation there were solid with the roster and things like that, you're the Lakers. You pick what coach you want and you make it happen. It's a marquee franchise. And even if they stink, it's still going to be a marquee franchise. It's still an attractive job in that regard. But, coaches can get paid anywhere these days.
Yeah.
And they're looking for a situation that's healthy for them. Darvin Ham, a guy like that, he wants his first head coaching job. And I think if he looks at the Lakers and says, okay, here's my first head coaching job, it ain't going to be my last head coaching job, because this thing is kind of weird. And, if I go in and turn things around, or things happen to magically turn around, he'll get a ton of credit for it. If things don't, well, it's the Lakers. And as we wrote, I quoted a league exec as saying recently, they tried to do rotisserie basketball there and just get all the talented players, not understanding the importance of chemistry, and that a team has to be a team to work. So there are people that are going to want that job because they want to get back into the NBA, or they want their first shot at a head coaching position. But overall, that's you're walking into a very difficult situation, and you've got to know that the team, you've got to want to know what they have planned, and if anything, for how it's going to go here, because how can you if you're a coach, how can you commit to something that is so fluid right now?
Yeah, and as we mentioned, the layers of the organization sort of make it complicated for a coach as well. I think Frank Vogel put up with a lot more stuff, that came out this year than we knew what he was dealing with previously. So,
we reported that Kurt Rambis was, calling him out in front of people.
Right.
And it was kind of funny, getting back to the combine for a second. I was talking to Rambis for a bit, and but whenever Laker people, Rambis, Pelinka, would walk by, would walk through the coffee shop, little conversations would break out about, oh geez, and like there would be some eyes would roll. It was interesting. Just, to see, that situation and how it's kind of an island unto its own right now.
Yeah. Well, let's turn our attention now to another situation that's sort of developed in, I think, a surprising way, and that's Zach LaVine and the Bulls. I think most people expected Zach to resign, and he said he's happy in Chicago. He said he likes playing with DeMar DeRozan. He's always said all the right things. and it's only in recent weeks that it's come out that, well, maybe he's not that happy playing with DeMar DeRozan. Maybe he really wants to make sure he's the number one option. Maybe he didn't love the offense, how much it focused on getting DeMar DeRozan mid-range shots. He was quoted as saying he's a big fan of the Lakers. A strange thing to do before you go into free agency. So, all these things now that have cropped up, and all of a sudden what seemed like a sure thing is less than a sure thing. I think that folks are nervous in Chicago. Should they be, or do you think this is all just part of free agent positioning, the typical sort of stuff that happens at this time of year?
I don't know. It's hard to see like what, how agents are trying to engineer things here. If that's the situation, which certainly seems plausible when the players involved, both actual players and from the agent side. But the reason that the Bulls fell apart last year was you had the injury to Alex Caruso, which, who's Alex Caruso? Well, he was a big part of their defense and how they played defense. And it's strange that Zach wouldn't like their offense, because their offense, when they were doing well, was predicated on Lonzo Ball and pushing the pace. And that's not an offense that is trying to just get DeMar DeRozan mid-range shots. That's the kind of offense you want. That's the kind of offense a player like Zach LaVine would love, which is get out in the open court, run. The ball finds energy. You're able to score in transition, use your athleticism, all those things. And, Lonzo Ball's injury, Alex Caruso, that just screwed their team up. That was a really good regular season team. And I realize things do get different in the playoffs, where it's more of a possession game, or it can be more of a possession game. But, the Bulls had built what they were getting to by being a team. Well, this team plays well with each other, and that's why maybe they're going to get a couple of wins that other teams won't, because that's the way they're playing their style, and they're playing it unselfishly. Who knows how much of this is posturing, but there's the players have power now, and I guess they always have to a degree, but now they're more willing to exercise it. And for years it was the owners that basically, here's what you have, here's where you're going to go, and it's the shoe is on the other foot to a large degree now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are still rules, though. There's still NBA collective bargaining rules, and it's going to be tough for any team to come in and give Zach LaVine a deal that's going to start, about $36-37 million a year. There's not a lot of teams that are in position to create that kind of cap space. Portland might be one that might be the most realistic one. But even then, Zach, you go to Portland. Well, guess what? You're not going to be taking as many shots as Damian Lillard. So, have you really changed your situation at all? And are you going to be in the playoffs in the Western Conference? I don't know. That's tough to see. Portland making that leap. So, it's easy to say these kinds of things like he wants to be somewhere else, or to name the Lakers or whatever. But you get into the nitty gritty of, okay, how are you going to make that happen? And it all of a sudden it's not so easy. You could maybe make it happen with Portland, Orlando. If you really want to go to Orlando, then good luck to you. San Antonio is a possibility as well. But again, these aren't teams that are that are going to get you any closer to the playoffs and are going to improve your situation in the NBA at all. So yeah, a lot of this is easy to say, but when you get down to it, it's hard to see how would this actually work.
Well, excuse me, guys, players sell out for money, sell out for a chance where they can win. Or they can sell it for a place. Maybe sell it's in proper terms that maybe has some bad connotations. But what they're after is the money, or a place they can win, or a place where their game is most comfortable. But you're not going to starve. If you're a player of any significant ability, you're going to get your money. And then it comes down to not just legacy, but are you in a situation where it's a good work environment for you? Yeah, if you're, the Knicks, not a good work environment, and you see how fast it turns. There's a guy that they give Julius Randle the ball 2 years ago, and he becomes a star, quote unquote, and a big money guy, and he's on one of the All NBA teams. This year he wasn't even anywhere near a sniff of it,
Yeah, right.
And the team goes down because all of a sudden, hey, I'm a star now, and that situation is difficult because it's a team. They bring in Kemba, they bring in Evan Fournier, they're trying to make moves so that building off the great feeling last season, which was what you made yourself from bad to being kind of mediocre, and everyone was all abuzz in New York. So anyway, just you look at guys and say, well, what do you want? And if I'm running a team, that would be really important to me to know what's a guy really after here. Is he just after money because you can pay him more than somebody else, and that's why he's coming to you? But is he a guy that's got that, just psychotic desire and need to win, that he'll do things. He'll sacrifice when he needs to make the greater part work. And you've got to read some minds here. And, I'm not sure it will hurt Zach LaVine's earning power in the long run, but it might, if teams are looking at it and say, hey, is this guy really committed to what we need? Or, then again, you might get a GM that says, I can throw a bunch of money at him and it'll help me look good in my job for a while. Even if it fails, well, I went out and got Zach LaVine.
Yeah. I still think he just goes back to the Bulls. That all this is the agency doing its posturing and trying to keep him inserted in the conversation and keep his profile high and make sure everybody knows that he's the number one option with the Bulls. He's the star of the team, and then the Bulls are just going to go out and give him $212 million over 5 years, and that'll be that. Everybody be happy then. So
yeah, I mean, they said
that's
what's going to help him the most is a healthy Lonzo Ball, and a team that's back to being able to play its good defense, which creates transition points, which is where Zach LaVine is a star.
Yeah, Patrick Williams and Alex Caruso, as you mentioned, they had so many significant injuries. Really to what were their top six guys. I mean, that's three of their top six guys who suffered, pretty significant injuries. So yeah, hard to judge that team, considering, what they were dealing with in terms of health. One last thing for you, Steve, and that is we're not putting the Golden State Warriors in the finals just yet, but we're going to put them in the finals anyway. So they've let's suppose.
I've always admired your power. Now
I'm saying, let's do. We really need to play Game 5. I mean, come on, this is what they call the gentleman's sweep, right? Okay, so but the Warriors, if you are the Warriors, you're looking at these two teams in the Eastern Conference, fighting and clawing and bashing each other night after night here. If you're Golden State, which one would you rather play?
Golden State would rather play the Miami Heat.
And why?
Golden State, pardon me?
Why would you say that?
Because Golden State has always had concern about the Celtics. Can tell you for a fact, back in 2018, when the Celtics went Game 7 in Boston with the Cavaliers, that the Warriors were very happy that the Cavaliers emerged from that one, that Boston pretty much blew that Game 7. The Celtics' athleticism and ability to switch all over the court is something that would, I'm not saying that the Warriors fear Boston, I'm not saying the Warriors don't think they can beat Boston, but the Warriors know that's would be a tougher test for them, a team that's able to switch everything. And when you look at it, Boston, because of other things not working out, Kyrie then Kemba, Boston is even more tough in that regard now, because you've got Marcus Smart is your starting point guard, assuming he's healthy, and that's a big issue here for Boston. Not only the desire to get this series over with, but the need to get it over with as quickly as possible. The fact that it should be either over with or, in their mind, or ending tonight. They need time to get healthy. And but Boston, with having messed up with the Kyrie thing, he takes off, and the Kemba thing not really ever working out. Yeah. They're a team that is even more concerning to Golden State now. And the pickup of Derek White as well also fits into how Boston plays, and the development of Rob Williams.
Yeah. I think defensively, I think Miami's they're almost as scary as the Celtics. I understand what you're saying about switching, but if you get a PJ Tucker, a Bam Adebayo, they can play the same level of defense, I think, that the Celtics can. The difference to me is offensively. The Heat can't score, especially against if the Warriors defense is really locked in, and I think we've only started to see that here in the Western Conference Finals. You go back to the Denver series, they were not playing the same level of defense that they did. They were the number 2 defense in the regular season after the Celtics, and they weren't playing like that early on in the playoffs. I think they're starting to get back to that. I think they knew that it would take some time and that they were going to have to do it on the fly in the playoffs, but I think they're getting there, and I just don't think the Heat can score on them. I think the Celtics, because of the ball. Go ahead.
No, the Heat, with the Max Strus, with if they let Tyler Hero if he's healthy, if they let Duncan Robinson see the floor, that's one of those teams where if they get on a roll hitting threes, they can win. That's one of the big reasons for the great mood swings you see in the NBA over the last few years, is because so many more teams are shooting more and more 3-pointers, and a hot streak can put you on top of the world. It can bring you down to look like you need to be relegated to the G League.
Yeah.
The swings are ungodly. Having said that, I'm a proponent. I like the way that the 3-point shot has improved the game, has spaced the floor, and all those things. But you're going to see some weird out results and some weird stretches. But Miami, like you said, their offense looks strange. But if they're hitting those, then it changes everything. Just think about Miami's offense. If now Butler doesn't shoot a lot of threes, but if Tyler Hero is hitting threes, and PJ Tucker, is decent from especially the corner, I think, how that opens the floor, how that allows a Kyle Lowry who is playing hurt. People forget how good he is.
Yeah.
And Victor Oladipo was the only thing I think that kept the in Game 4 in Boston, kept that from being canceled or called early for the 10-run rule.
Right.
He's a really good player that's coming back from injury that he can get hot as well. So I don't think they have as much firepower offensively as Boston does, but they're going to throw haymakers offensively, and if they're able to space the floor, then what that does for Jimmy Butler in his mid-range, what that does for Bam Adebayo into the paint, can win them something, can win them a couple of games here and there and make it interesting. And, then their defense can come into play. And if you're not shooting, if all of a sudden the Warriors, if it's a Golden State Miami final, and if the Warriors all of a sudden hit a chili patch, what happens?
Yeah, and I think the Warriors will have their hands full with either of the Eastern Conference teams. I just think the Celtics, I think their ball movement and the fire, they have better individual scores as well. And that's no disrespect to Jimmy Butler, of course, but Celtics got two of them. You know, they've got Jason Tatum, one of the best in the game, and they've got Jaylen Brown, who's pretty darn good too. So, you know, when you get into those half court slogs, I think I like the Celtics' chances of being able to manufacture shots more than Miami.
Your points are well taken, except for those times when Boston gets flustered and goes away from its ball movement. And you've seen it for a couple of quarters during this series, and it's cost them games. I mean, and the turnovers in Game 3, my Lord, that was just
weird. Yeah.
You know, these men are professionals. Please, children, don't try this at home. It was, you know, ugly to watch. Just, you know, you can say the Miami's defense, but when guys are driving into three people or making just like, okay, I realize you wanted to pass there, but was the person you were thinking of passing it to, were they on the floor at the time? I mean, were they even, you know, it was just strange to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, Steve. We're going to leave it there. And thank you, everybody. And enjoy the playoffs. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.